We live in the most comfortable moment in human history, and yet our bodies are quietly paying the price. If you're over 60, this isn't about blame, and it's not about fear, it's about awareness. Because while you've been sitting more, resting more, and surrounding yourself with ease, your legs have been learning a dangerous lesson, that they are no longer needed, and biology is ruthless. What we don't use, we lose. Every week, without pain, without drama, strength slips away. Not because you're aging, but because your nervous system adapts to comfort faster than it adapts to challenge. Your muscles, your balance, your confidence all live on a simple scale. Effort on one side, ease on the other. Tip too far toward ease and weakness follows. That's not opinion, that's physiology. Here's the hopeful truth. The same system that takes strength away can give it back. Your brain and body are astonishingly responsive. They are waiting for a signal, not a gym membership, not punishment. Just a clear message that says, I still need you. One simple chair exercise can be that message. Small, deliberate discomfort, enough to wake the system up, enough to restore balance. You might feel resistance at first. That's normal. That's the brain protecting its comfort. But on the other side of that resistance is something deeply emotional. Steadiness when you stand, confidence when you walk, freedom when you move through the world without fear of falling. Strength doesn't just support your legs. It supports your independence, your dignity, your sense of self. This is not about doing more, it's about doing enough, consistently, choosing a little effort today so you don't lose a lot tomorrow. Because aging well is not about avoiding discomfort, it's about using it wisely. And your body, no matter your age, is still listening. Comfort feels harmless. In fact, it feels earned. After decades of working, raising families, solving problems, we tell ourselves we deserve ease, softer chairs, fewer stairs, longer hours sitting still, and none of this feels dangerous because nothing breaks all at once. There's no sharp pain, no dramatic warning, just a quiet shift. But biology doesn't interpret comfort as kindness. It interprets it as instruction. Your body is constantly listening to what you do, not what you intend. When movement disappears from daily life, your brain receives a clear message. These muscles are no longer essential, and the brain is efficient to a fault. It conserves energy by weakening what isn't demanded. This isn't aging, this is adaptation. The same mechanism that once helped humans survive famine now works against us in a world of abundance and ease. We live surrounded by frictionless living, chairs everywhere, cars for short distances, screens that reward stillness. Each convenience removes a small demand from the body. One at a time, these demands vanish, and with them goes strength. The legs, in particular, suffer because they are designed for load, for balance, for repeated use. When they don't get that signal, they atrophy quietly, week by week, month by month, until standing feels harder and walking feels less stable. What makes comfort especially deceptive is that it feels good in the moment. Dopamine rewards ease. The brain learns quickly that stillness is pleasurable and effort is unnecessary. Over time, this pleasure-pain balance shifts. Even small movements begin to feel uncomfortable, not because they are harmful, but because the system has recalibrated around inactivity. We mistake that discomfort as danger, and so we avoid movement even more. The cycle tightens, but comfort is not neutral. It actively trains weakness. Every time you choose ease over effort, you're not just resting, you're teaching your nervous system a pattern, and patterns harden. Balance declines, reaction time slows, confidence erodes, not suddenly, but subtly enough that it's easy to rationalize. I'm just getting older. Yet when we look closely, we see that bodies exposed to regular, modest challenge maintain strength far longer than those protected from it. The hopeful part of this story is that the same system that learns weakness can relearn strength. The brain remains plastic well into later life. It responds quickly to new demands, especially when they are consistent and meaningful. Introducing small amounts of effort, standing up from a chair with intention, engaging the legs daily, begins to reverse the message of comfort. The brain recalibrates, muscles respond, balance improves. This isn't about rejecting comfort entirely or punishing the body. It's about understanding that ease must be balanced with effort to stay healthy. A life with no friction slowly robs us of capability. And capability, more than comfort, is what gives us freedom. When we choose small challenges now, we protect our ability to move, to stand, to live independently later. Comfort may feel kind, but without movement, it becomes a quiet thief. Many people over 60 carry a quiet belief that weakness is simply the price of aging, that as the years pass, the body naturally shrinks, slows, and fades, and there is very little to be done about it. This belief is powerful, not because it's true, but because it's repeated so often that it begins to feel inevitable. Yet when we look at the body through the lens of neuroscience and physiology, a different story emerges. What we call age-related weakness is often learned behavior reinforced by environment and habit, not an unavoidable biological fate. The human nervous system is designed to adapt across the entire lifespan. It doesn't retire at 60. It doesn't stop listening. It continues to remodel itself based on what we repeatedly ask it to do. If the daily signal is rest, sitting, and avoidance of effort, the system responds by reducing strength and efficiency. If the signal is movement, load, and balance, the system responds by maintaining, and often rebuilding, capacity. This is not optimism. This is how the brain works. Modern life teaches older adults to move less under the guise of protection. We warn them to be careful, to avoid strain, to sit down before they fall. Slowly, the world shrinks. Activities that once felt normal begin to feel risky, not because the body is incapable, but because it has been underused. Muscles lose confidence before they lose mass. Balance falters, not from age alone, but from lack of challenge. The body becomes cautious because the brain has learned caution. What's striking is how quickly this process can reverse. When people begin to reintroduce small, consistent demands, strength returns at a pace that surprises them. Standing becomes steadier. Walking feels more natural. This is because the weakness was never hardwired. It was conditional. The system was simply waiting for new instructions. And when those instructions come, the response is often profound. There is an emotional weight to believing weakness is inevitable. It creates resignation. It discourages effort before effort even begins. Why try if decline is guaranteed? But when that belief is challenged, something shifts internally. People stop negotiating with limitation and start engaging with possibility. The body senses that shift. Movement becomes an act of agency, not obligation. We tend to think that real change requires big effort, long workouts, heavy sweating, pushing to exhaustion. When that feels overwhelming, we do nothing at all. But the brain doesn't work on an all-or-nothing system. It works on signals. And even small, carefully chosen discomfort can send a powerful message that begins to restore balance in a body shaped by too much ease. Discomfort has gotten a bad reputation, especially as we age. We're taught to avoid it, to see any strain as a warning sign. But there's an important distinction between pain that injures and discomfort that strengthens. The first should be avoided. The second is essential. Without it, the nervous system drifts toward fragility. With it, the system recalibrates toward resilience. In a world engineered to eliminate effort, the pleasure-pain balance tilts dramatically. We experience constant rewards, comfortable chairs, instant entertainment, effortless transportation, and very little physical challenge. The brain adapts by raising the threshold for effort. What once felt manageable now feels hard, not because the body can't do it, but because the system has lost tolerance for discomfort. This is where intentional small challenges become so powerful. A simple chair exercise may look insignificant, but to the brain it represents something meaningful. Resistance to passivity, standing up slowly, engaging the legs, holding balance for a moment. These acts introduce just enough strain to wake the system. The discomfort is mild, temporary, and safe, yet it carries information. It tells the nervous system that these muscles are still required, that balance still matters, that effort has a place. When this kind of discomfort is repeated, something subtle happens. The sensation that once felt unpleasant becomes familiar, then manageable, then oddly satisfying. Dopamine begins to attach not to ease, but to effort. This is how balance is restored, not through force, but through repetition. The brain relearns that discomfort is not a threat, it is a teacher. Emotionally, this process is often accompanied by surprise. People expect to feel worse when they challenge themselves. Instead, they feel steadier, more capable. There's a quiet pride in doing something difficult on purpose, even if that difficulty is small. That pride reinforces the behavior, creating a positive loop that replaces the old cycle of avoidance. Importantly, this approach respects the realities of aging. It doesn't demand intensity or comparison. It doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for willingness. A willingness to feel a little uncomfortable today to prevent far greater discomfort tomorrow. The discomfort of frailty, dependence, and fear of falling. The brain is exquisitely sensitive to patterns. When small discomfort is introduced daily, the pattern shifts. Muscles strengthen, reaction time improves, balance stabilizes, but just as important, confidence returns. Movement stops feeling dangerous and starts feeling trustworthy again. Restoring balance is not about pushing harder. It's about choosing effort intentionally. In doses the system can absorb. One simple exercise done consistently can interrupt years of passivity. It can remind the body of its purpose. And in doing so, it reclaims something deeply human, the ability to meet challenge even late in life with steadiness and grace. We are drawn to intensity because it feels decisive. It promises fast results and clear transformation. But for most people, especially later in life, intensity is not only unnecessary, it's unsustainable. The brain doesn't change through dramatic moments. It changes through repetition. And when it comes to protecting strength, balance, and independence, consistency is the most powerful force we have. The nervous system learns by frequency, not heroics. One hard workout followed by days of inactivity sends a confusing signal. It says effort is rare, optional, and exhausting. Daily, moderate movement sends a different message. This is normal, this is expected, this is who we are. Over time, that message becomes embedded. Muscles respond, coordination improves, balance stabilizes. Not because the effort was extreme, but because it was reliable. There is also a psychological component to consistency that often goes unrecognized. Intensity invites resistance. It triggers fear of failure, fear of injury, fear of not measuring up. Consistency lowers the barrier to entry. It makes movement approachable. When the task feels doable, we show up more often. And showing up, even imperfectly, is what rewires the system. Many people wait to feel motivated before they act, but motivation is not a prerequisite for change. It is a byproduct of action. Consistent movement creates small wins. These wins build confidence. Confidence reduces friction. Over time, what once required effort becomes part of routine. The brain stops negotiating. Movement becomes automatic. Consistency also protects us from the all-too-common cycle of overexertion and withdrawal. Intense bursts can lead to soreness, discouragement, or injury, especially in bodies that have adapted to long periods of rest. That negative experience teaches avoidance. In contrast, modest daily effort builds tolerance. The body adapts upward, gradually, without triggering alarm. From a biological perspective, repeated low-level challenges are exactly what muscles and joints need. They stimulate blood flow, neural activation, and strength without overwhelming recovery systems. Balance improves not through rare dramatic tests, but through regular engagement. Standing up, sitting down, stabilizing, again and again. These movements train the brain to trust the body. Emotionally, consistency fosters self-respect. There is something grounding about keeping a promise to yourself, even a small one. Over time, that trust compounds. People begin to identify as someone who moves daily, someone who takes care of their body. Identity shifts, and behavior follows. This approach reframes progress. Success is no longer measured by how hard you pushed, but by how often you returned. Missed days don't signal failure. They are simply interruptions to be corrected. There is no shame, no urgency, just a steady recommitment. In a culture that celebrates extremes, choosing consistency is a quiet act of wisdom. It aligns with how the brain learns and how the body ages. It honors limits without surrendering to them. And over time, this gentle persistence preserves what matters most, the ability to move confidently through the world day after day without fear. We often talk about physical strength as if it were separate from the mind, as if muscles only matter for movement and not for how we feel about ourselves or our place in the world. But the boundary between physical and psychological strength is far thinner than we realize. When the body feels unstable, the mind becomes cautious. When the legs feel weak, the world feels threatening. And over time, that quiet fear begins to shape how we live. One of the first things people lose when leg strength declines is not mobility, but confidence. They hesitate before standing. They scan the ground while walking. They avoid unfamiliar places, uneven surfaces, crowds. This is not irrational anxiety. It is the brain responding appropriately to perceived risk. The nervous system's primary job is to keep us safe. When it senses instability, it narrows our behavior to reduce danger. Freedom shrinks, not by choice, but by design. As strength returns, something remarkable happens. The mind relaxes. The constant background vigilance fades. People stop thinking about every step and start engaging with their surroundings again. This is because physical capability sends a powerful signal of safety to the brain. Strong legs tell the nervous system, I can handle this. And when the system believes that, it allows us to move through the world with more openness and less fear. This is why strength is not merely a fitness goal. It is a form of psychological security. It protects independence not just practically, but emotionally. The ability to rise from a chair without effort, to walk without hesitation, to trust one's balance, these are deeply regulating experiences. They reduce stress. They restore a sense of agency. They remind us that we are still capable participants in our own lives. There is also a profound dignity in physical self-reliance. Needing less help does not mean rejecting connection. It means choosing autonomy where possible. Strength allows people to say yes to invitations, to travel, to spontaneous moments. Without it, life becomes carefully managed, overly planned, constrained by fear of falling or fatigue. The psychological toll of that constant self-monitoring is significant, even if it's rarely named. Importantly, fear does not disappear through reassurance alone. Telling someone they are safe does little if their body feels unsteady. Confidence is built from evidence, and evidence comes from experience. Each time the legs support the body successfully, the brain updates its expectations. Each successful movement rewrites the internal narrative from vulnerability to competence. This process is gradual but powerful. Physical strength accumulates, and with it, psychological freedom expands. People reclaim parts of themselves they didn't realize they had lost. Curiosity, spontaneity, joy. Movement becomes an expression of life rather than a source of concern. In this way, caring for the body becomes an act of mental health. Strength buffers against anxiety. Balance reduces fear. Capability fosters confidence. These are not abstract ideas. They are lived realities shaped by daily movement choices. When we invest in physical strength, we are not chasing youth or aesthetics. We are protecting something far more essential: the freedom to engage with the world without fear, to trust ourselves in motion, and to live with a sense of steadiness that supports both body and mind. This does not mean that aging has no effect. Recovery may take longer, progress may be slower, but slower does not mean impossible. Learned weakness thrives on repetition of inactivity. Learned strength thrives on repetition of use. The body doesn't require intensity or perfection. It requires consistency, a clear, repeated signal that it is still needed. When we replace the story of "this is just aging" with "this is adaptation," responsibility returns, not as pressure, but as empowerment. The question changes from "why is my body failing?" to "what have I been teaching it?" And teaching can always change. Understanding that weakness is learned, not inevitable, opens the door to dignity in aging. It restores a sense of authorship over one's physical life. The body is not a passive victim of time. It is an active participant, responding faithfully to the environment we create for it. And even later in life, that environment can be reshaped, one deliberate movement at a time.